Oleg, Nadia McConnell here. When you talk about corruption, or at least I guess if I would talk about corruption, I would take a very broad, I would make a very broad definition of it. And it leads me to the question that I want to ask you. And that has to do with following, first and foremost, the Constitution of Ukraine. I mean, to me, it's a fundamental, basic element of rule of law. And yet, some of the pronouncements that President-elect Yanukovych has announced, for instance, a possible extending the Black Sea Fleet arrangement, the whole issue of language, the canceling of the local elections, though it was not his action, I guess it was an action of the parliament, or deputies voting other members' cards, are violations of the Constitution. To me, that's sort of a fundamental issue that has to be addressed. What is your view about that?
Yeah, I would agree, but in Ukraine, violation of Constitution is not in news at all. And Constitution was ignored by guarantor of Constitution, President and his administration, by Prime Minister, by Parliament. Therefore, again, you have to do it. You are in the States, in the country where law is the law. In Ukraine, many civil experts are discussing what is the point of, let's say, upgrading or improving Constitution, making it more perfect, when politicians are happily ignoring those laws. And therefore, it's like a vicious circle. Law is actually ignored. We have politics, we've got the worst case scenario when politicians have introduced quotas into Supreme Court, Constitutional Court. I mean, politicians, it's like President has his number of quota, then Parliament has, different parties have, and then it led to a situation where each side is blaming other in political influence over courts. Therefore, we are coming back again to the same reform of legislation. Constitution is the highest law which politicians are blaming for being not too well thought of and controversial. But even if it is clearly defining obligations, still it is not respected. Therefore, it's also the issue of whom we are electing in Ukraine, and it's also the issue of public tolerance. My feeling is that public tolerance is now close to zero, that this kind of obvious cynical challenge and ignorance of law in my country, and law at large, not simply constitution, but the fact, for example, that very, very broadly discussed in Ukraine, the fact that you may kill a person and get rid of it without any responsibility. If you are a member of parliament, or most all 40 members are meeting voluntarily, we are making our joint actions, we are buying at our own cost, for example, loudspeakers for tomorrow's meeting, we are buying different things which we need for, let's say, very active public activity. This is, we are getting kind of community which is unheard of in Ukraine, unfortunately, because as one very wise civil society expert told me, that friendship ends where budget begins. So we don't have common budget at all, which makes our project very different. So I think that at some point I would be prepared to answer you. Now for me, much more important is to use that momentum which I have got, because it took almost 2 months for different NGOs to start to think and work as a team. And what I see now, they are very determined, they are very eager to act, they are honest, they don't speak about money at all. What we need is maybe creative thinking, and we are proving that we can be very creative. So I think that the fact of this old culture of relationship between civil society, NGOs, and donors must be substantially changed, because it practically bankrupted from effectiveness point of view. When I am looking at the conference, for example, organized at 5-star hotels with guests coming first class from different parts of the world, Canada, US, and we are all coming to Brussels to discuss security issue of Ukraine. It's a bad joke, because for that money I could have organized massive information campaign, maybe with hundreds of promos on TV, but nobody is doing that. For some reasons, we have this I don't know how even to call that approach. It looks like nobody is counting money, and I understand that there is crisis, resources are limited, or for some reasons, at many conferences I'm seeing the same people talking about same things, and I don't see added value at even attending those conferences. Unfortunately, some conferences are organized even by my good friends, and with all respect to them, I personally don't see any future, any effectiveness, and any reason for this kind of activity to be continued. It's much more rewarding what we are doing today with young students, with journalists, with people who are eager to do much more for much less amount. And I guess future, in my understanding, should belong to this kind of initiatives, where you can see that your assistance produced multiplied effect, that what is done is much more than what was provided. And I believe that I will be going along this way.